Hey everyone, we're back, and this time we're doing more playtesting for Damon Claw. I'm going to be playing through the game this time, and with me always is Mike. Say hi, Mike.
Hey, how's it going?
Alright, so if you remember from last time, we were just playing the current build and seeing what all we could tighten up for this first vertical slice. And the idea here is to not just find bugs, but we're also going to be tweaking any gameplay issues we find. So check it out. And I did notice that with that intro, I think we had talked about that before, whether the buttons should be there or not, on the display. And I wasn't sure what we decided, but...
Yeah, I'll make a note of that.
Alright. So we'll get through this little... And and I guess you hadn't added the speed up of the text on the intros yet, or...
Yeah, if you hold down the button for like a second, it should skip so that you'll go right to the gameplay.
Okay, yeah, it did skip. I thought maybe it was just going to like display the text faster,
Oh right, yeah, no. It's,
right, that was the impression I had. But so yeah, it worked. Seemingly worked like you mentioned though. So.
Okay, but that's a good idea. I could make it so that if you press the button, once the text is going through ahead of time, it'll just make all the text appear for that one segment instantaneously so that you can get through it faster without completely skipping it. So
right.
That's a good idea. And press button to skip. We'll call that typewriter effect. I had to be a little sloppy with this one because we basically have this situation where for the cinematic scene, there's one image that's displayed and then the corresponding text, and then we can put in additional images. Right now up to 3, but we can very easily add more if we ever need to. So it would be image fades in, and then the text starts displaying in that typewriter effect, one letter at a time very quickly. And then once that was done and the button prompt appears, you could press the button and go to the next. So what this event does is if the player presses a button while the cinematic button animation is locked, which means the text is not done filling in that typewriter style effect, then it's going to set the text. We make it just fill in with the entire set of text all at once instead of doing the typewriter thing. And then we set the current letter variable, which was the number that was keeping track of which current letter it was at, to fill it in, and it would keep adding to that. Now it just makes it the full amount. So basically it's a cheat that skips ahead that says, okay, we're not doing the typewriter thing. We'll fill out the text and we'll update that current letter instead of just adding 1 and then re-updating the text to have 1 more character. And then we set B1 to 2, which is a little trick to make it so that this event can't keep looping on itself. So this checks if it's 1, and it's 1 or more if you keep the button held down. So if we check B1 equals 1, that means the button was just pressed just now. So that's all it's doing. And then the reason we have 3 is because right now we can have up to 3 different images with corresponding text that appear in sequence for a cinematic scene. We could easily add as many as we want or remove some. But the point is, for any additional image we would need to add, I would need to add another one of these, because you'll see here it checks specifically T1 is for text 1, T2 is for text 2, T3 is for text 3, and so on, which corresponds with the cinematic image that it's displaying.
Alright. I obviously didn't make it very far, but I didn't encounter any major problems.
Yeah, don't forget the uppercut is key for making the birds easy.
Right.
But as you said, I already did slow down the initial couple of birds, but we could make them start even lower so that someone that doesn't know the uppercut is the easy solution can deal with the birds, the first few birds, more easily.
Right. So in Black Belt, from what I remember, it is the same as this, right? You hit up to do the super jump?
Sort of.
Or is it down? It's down up. That's that's
Right,
what it
exactly.
was.
Black belt was up to jump, normal jump, and then down quickly, and then up immediately after pressing down to do the super jump.
Right.
So this one is hold up and then press jump. That's the current default setting.
Right.
But for people that will end up eventually playing on like clunky old one-button joysticks, they'll have that option to set it so that up is jump and down up is super jump, just like black belt.
That was interesting. I guess it did upgrade my power, right?
I think so.
Okay. So he didn't do the animation for whatever reason. I think it's because I was doing a move when he got the power. Yeah.
Well, it only does the animation the very first time you get the magic, not each time you upgrade.
Oh,
so
right.
That's the issue.
Okay. If that's the case, then it should
Yeah.
be fine.
I think maybe it might be a little much if it does the animation every time, but maybe not. Maybe because you expected it, maybe it would be better that way. Or at least maybe right now there's not even a sound effect when you grab it, is there? Maybe a bigger visual effect, even if time doesn't pause. Maybe every time you get the power up, there should be a very specific sound and visual effect to let you know you've powered up your gauntlet.
Right. I'm just trying different things just to see what it's like.
Yeah, that's what this is all about.
So if you're not, I've noticed though, if you try not to use the uppercut on these first birds, they are like 10 times as hard.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah.
And they really trip you up. So
yeah. So what do you think? There is a danger of obviously making them too slow, so it looks weird when they're coming on screen, like our old friend, the super slow.
Right.
Heard from a previous video, but there's probably a little wiggle room left for that, and we could make them start at your level, the first couple of birds, so that you don't have to jump and punch.
Right. Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I think that's the thing, is it's sort of that in the first level you want to train each action individually with the gameplay, so there would be something that trains you to jump and something that trains you to use the attack, but they would be separate things. So yeah, I do believe the first enemy should likely be just I don't know, maybe a bird that is eye level, and you can just take it out or immediately
with a punch.
And then maybe the second one's a little higher, so you're kind of forced to I'm gonna have to jump to get that one, or
Right.
Even though we know the uppercut is really the best solution, but
right. And we will eventually make the attract mode that shows that and even shows the controller input for how to do it. But like you said, some people might not. They might skip right into the gameplay.
Yeah, and something we didn't talk about much last time was sound effects. We have the sound playing here. I did notice that the uppercut doesn't have a sound effect at all, any version of it. So that's one we'll have to fix.
Is there, I'll bet there is not yet, is there a sound when you do the drop kick and miss and hard land on the ground? You're going to have to empty out your, maybe a couple of quick uppercuts will let you empty it out really fast, and then you can get out them.
Alright.
Or maybe it's easier to just restart the level and then...
Oh, when he hits the ground, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. Yeah, is there any
There is one, but it's just the regular landing sound, so we'll have to have a special one, yeah.
We use a free program called Audacity to make all our sound effects, and what I tend to do when creating sound effects, not only do I have some sound pool collections that I had purchased with other game authoring systems and libraries, but also I would suggest just take the extra time to really customize the sound. I almost always do a lot of cropping, fading in and out, shifting the pitch and the tempo and the timing, adding other effects like reverb, echo, and I often layer several sound effects at once. And then when you export that out, it's all of those sounds, all modified, combined into one new sound to really get the really specific flavor of sound that you're after. You're going to want to at the very least export out from Audacity a WAV file. That's what Construct typically needs. And it's going to try to convert it to I think it's called MP4 and an OGG file. And sometimes it fails to make the OGG file for whatever reason. So if that happens, luckily, as you can see here, Audacity can export as OGG as well. And just to import that in, and it'll work properly on the platforms you export to that require the OGG format instead of the other format. And as far as getting the sound effects into the game, it's simply a matter of looking for all of the events that should be triggering sound effects and just using the audio object to play. In this case, I'm temporarily playing a music soundtrack so that I can better judge the overall volume and balance and pitch of sounds. Since we don't have our own music yet, I just found a suitable game music to just put there temporarily in the background so I could make sure the sound effects can still be heard over video game background music, but also aren't overpowering. So that's just playing and looping, I think. Yep, the song. And then, but in general, and you tend to do that at the start of a new level. But then otherwise, it's just going to be finding all of the events that need a sound effect, and then just using the audio plugin to play a sound effect when you need it. And I haven't done it everywhere yet, but I should be giving it a tag sounds while I play the sounds. And the reason I'm doing that is eventually we're going to add the ability to go into a settings menu and to adjust the background music volume and the sound effect volumes separately. And if I tag things, then we're going to be able to set the volume of all sound effects to whatever amount we want, and the same thing for the music. You could see I tagged the song as music, and I should be tagging all sound effects as sound. And then the only one that was relatively tricky, I've added some footstep sound effects. And that's in the specific level events. And let's see if I look at okay, so 567. So footsteps, you'll see here what I did was, because this is a spriter file for this Giro character, what I could have done is use the actual spriter file and put the footstep sound effects right at the exact moments in the animation as the foot is touching the ground. But the problem with that is that triggers a specific sound effect, whereas what I want to do is have every level, like the second level is a snow level, and I don't want the same sound effect to happen. So I basically hard-coded it instead of doing it directly in Spriter. So I just looked in the Spriter file to see when the exact time was in the timeline when the foot hits the ground. And then I made this event. If the animation walk is playing and the current time is 226 milliseconds or greater, and that's when the first foot hits the ground. And I make sure trigger once is on. Because if you just try to do it exactly, if you say if current time is exactly 226 milliseconds, the cycle of the game might not be fast enough to catch that exact millisecond. In fact, I tried that at first and it did not work at all. So what you do is you do greater than equal and then trigger once. So that way, as soon as it catches that it is at that time or beyond, it'll play the footstep sound effect once. And it's always within such a tiny fraction of a second that it seems perfectly synchronized. And so I just did that for both footfalls in the animation. And then I did something extremely similar for the flying enemy. And again, this is in the specific level because we use the same flying enemy sprite with different animations playing to be different flying creatures. Sometimes it'll be a giant insect, sometimes it'll be or an owl or a bat, and we might want a different sound effect for the flapping wing for each creature. And you could see we're just playing a specific sound for a specific frame. Since these are just a standard construct sprite, it's just keyframes only. There's no tweened timeline, so to speak. So it's very easy to just look back in your animation, see what frame the sound effect should trigger on, and then just create your hard code that says, okay, trigger once when that frame hits of the particular animation you need, then play that sound effect. And lastly, this one got a little bit tricky because with the boomerang, I wanted a little whoosh, whoosh, whoosh sound to be looping the whole time that any of the birdmen that can throw their boomerang blade, I want it to be playing. So I don't think, I might actually be mistaken, but I don't think you can give sounds multiple tags. I thought you could, but when I looked, it didn't say so, so I'll have to Google that more. But for now, I just tagged this particular sound effect as boomerang. And so I play this little tiny sample that's basically just like one whoosh whoosh sound. And I'm basically checking every loop of the game if that sound is not playing, and there does exist one of these boomerang sprites, which means it's flying on the screen. Either the smaller ones or the bigger ones that other sub-boss Birdman throws. I check, is that audio sample playing yet? And if it's not, play it. So it'll just continually be playing that sound so long as one of those things exist.
I'm just seeing how the timing on that was, because I'd never done it. It seemed alright to me.
Yep.
That's the full experience so far. I thought the timing of all of the restarting with a life or dying and going through the intro thing was pretty good, and the fact that you could skip it, it was very responsive, and I didn't have any issues there, so all that seems fine to me. I'll just load up level 1 again and just play from there and see if I happen to notice anything else, give it another go. One thing that trips me up sometimes, and I think I had mentioned this last time I played, is like the uppercut being the down button and the super jump being the high jump. Like, I can do them, it's easy to remember them once you get the hang of it, but if you're trying to do them close to each other or something, like that kind of trips me up, hitting the up or down. Like, my brain just kind of gets, you know, like, oh, which one am I doing, the uppercut or the, you know, and then you're both, it's an upward motion for your character, so it kind of messes with me. Yeah, so
that gets me even still sometimes, and I've played the game a million times. It is similar to some degree in Black Belt, even though Black Belt there's less moves, so it's harder to get confused.
Right.
But that thing where the power-up's coming, oh crap, like, and then you just regular jump, and then you realize, oh, I had to go down and then up and do the super jump to get it.
Right.
But I think part of the solution to that might be that we plan on allowing people to map their own buttons, and people with a lot of buttons could definitely either map an entire button to the uppercut potentially, or maybe even let them set it to be the reverse, where, or not the reverse, but up in attack is the uppercut, and up and jump is super jump. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like right now, up and attack is just regular punch attack, isn't it?
It doesn't.
So theoretically,
it doesn't do anything. It just.
Yeah. Why not?
Yeah.
We could make both up and attack and down and attack both do the uppercut if we want to, or just let people choose which one does the uppercut.
Right. Yeah, I think that would be a good idea, and we can see how that feels once we implement it. That way it would cause no confusion, and people would just, they would adapt to either one, but at the same time, I don't know, two things doing the same move is a little strange, so you know, I don't know.
I'm thinking maybe just let people choose it in the menu.
One thing that I noticed, see, I've got the first level of powers, and then I can do this, like watch, and that fireball, that first level meteor, killing people in one hit seems a little overpowered to me. Like it seems okay when you get like a second level. To me, it feels like suddenly any ground enemy is just incredibly easy once you get the first level power up.
Same thing with drop kick. It looked like just one drop kick to the Birdmen. I think the ones with the shield, they lasted 2 hits.
I think regular enemies do last 2 hits with the drop kick because.
Oh, good. Okay.
Well, and the good thing about that is the drop kick is still a little risky because if someone does their swing, you can still get hit. So which I like, you know. And
if you miscalculate, you're sitting duck for a second doing your hard land.
Right. Which, you know, you can get into that sort of bounce mode with them.
Yeah.
But, you know, we won't have a bunch of enemies around where you can make that look
Mario
ridiculous.
Kart.
Yeah.
Definitely
Oh.
definitely the first power level should not be able to take those sub-bosses out with one hit. It should take at least two of
Right.
the fireball if you only have one power level.
How do you feel about that guy's boomerang weapon still existing after he's dead?
I
Like,
was
that
just going to ask you that.
Because I
You-
got
do-
stuck while the camera was moving, and then I got
Oh yeah,
hit
that's
by it.
unacceptable.
Yeah.
No, you gotta do something about that. And the other thing is, do we want to make it so that the boomerangs just like disappear, fade out, or something if you kill the enemy that threw it?
Right.
And my initial instinct is no, we don't want to go that far. But at the same time, I mentioned this a long time ago, but I feel like maybe making it kind of just like in Black Belt actually, where a well-timed punch will deflect the weapon. The only tricky part of that is they've only got the one weapon, and we would have to make their programming more sophisticated so that they can basically switch to like fisticuffs instead of using their weapon for an attack,
Right.
or make it so that they just run away or something if you deflect their weapon.
I think if you defeat one guy and the other one's still there, it makes sense that his boomerang would still be there. The last one though, since you do kind of instantly lose control, I don't know. Like, I mean, maybe whatever direction it's going, it just
Keeps going.
I don't know. Or at least in that instance, just give the player invincibility while the camera's moving or
Right.
something. That might
Well,
work better.
What's happening is the time is basically supposed to be frozen at that point while the camera is moving.
Right.
But for some reason, that boomerang didn't obey that, so that's basically a bug. So it should have happened, according to the logic of the game right now, what should have happened was the time of the boomerang would freeze too, so that you'd see that it's going to be a problem, but when you get your control back, that's when it would start moving again.
Right.
Like time would. So let me get that working first, and then we can readdress it and see how it feels. But that's definitely the other option. Is we'll just make it so that once you beat both, any of their boomerangs just disappear.
Yeah. That's
And
probably
I-
best.
I
yeah.
kind of like that.
And
Once-
one thing is
Yep. Go ahead.
also, speaking of sound effects, is we still don't have that sound effect for if you try to use your powers but you don't have enough magic, and it kind of like
Yes.
and we had talked about that, so that not being there I think makes a big difference as to whether or not you're aware of what happened. Even though, I mean, I do understand it myself, but it it might confuse players or something. Having
Yeah,
that there
totally.
will, yeah. Oh, well, nice. I'm feeling like the difficulty. I mean, other than that meteor thing that was being overpowered, I feel like overall it's pretty decent. I mean, I'm having a harder
Right.
time than you, but I keep
This is
wanting
like
to
your first time.
Yeah, but I keep wanting to replay, which is a good,
Yeah.
like that. And I did make it a couple times after enough tries, so it's not, I don't want it to be too easy. Is
Yeah,
how I
yeah.
feel about it.
So here's the thing that I kept thinking. Every once in a while, I would think this, and then I would forget. But I think a nice visual cue, just when the power-ups are about to be on the screen, would really help a lot to give your brain that chance to say, "Okay, I have to double, I have to super jump. How do you do that again?"
Right.
Like right now, you kinda, if you're paying super close attention to the symbols in the gauntlet, you know that you've just earned it, but it's very
Right.
subtle. And we could even put like a little countdown arrow on the screen to let you know, like on the right edge of the screen, like here it comes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, a
Something
little
like that.
gleaming
Yeah.
animation on the edge or something.
exactly.
That it's like with a minor sound effect. Yeah, I think it
Yeah.
gives you that heads up. I think that would work well.
The first thing I did for this was just create two regular construct sprites that have a horizontal sine wave movement, and I created just a single animation in each of them. Starts dark, gets a little lighter, lighter still, and then disappears. The only sort of tricky part about the animation is if we look at the speed of the animation, it's set extremely slowly because we want these first 3 frames to be very similar to a 3-second countdown. So it displays this for roughly a second, and then this, and then this. But then, and if you look, so these are each displayed for a normal amount of time, but then the final 3 frames are only displayed for a tenth of the normal duration. So these last 3 frames play very quickly. So it does the countdown and then very quickly does this white flash disappear, which lets you know that that magical object that you earned is about to come on screen. So then if we look in the gameplay events, what used to happen is as soon as the player earned either the magic pickup or the health pickup, the game would immediately generate the actual magic or health pickup and send it flying across the screen. But now we've got this intermediate sort of middleman of the incoming pickup arrow. And the other thing is, we only want one of these arrows to be on screen at a time, otherwise it would be really confusing if the player managed to earn both a power-up and a health pickup at the same time. So we created 2 variables, one that's called power queue and one that's called health queue. And then we set those variables to 1 as soon as the player has earned either of those things. And then it checks to make sure neither of those arrows exist yet on screen. And if not, then it will create the arrow. And when that queue variable is set, but then once that animation is done playing, I mean magic, when the default animation finishes playing, this is where you create the actual power-up just as we used to and set it in motion just as we used to and all that.
But yeah, it feels really good after you get going with it.
Yeah, I really like the timing of, like you said, the birdmen, they draw their weapon, they have that tail for just the right amount of time for you to get in there and kill them before they get their attack off, and then the way they slide back and then explode is more viscerally rewarding than if they just instantaneously blew up.
Right. I made it pretty well that time. So it shows like the learning curve's not too steep. Once you get into it and you get the moves down, you can, don't have to spend a lot of time getting decent at the game, which is nice as well. So
nice, made it all the way to the boss fight. Very cool.
Mm-hmm. And that's gonna be one epic boss right there.
Yeah. There's not much point spending time here. You can't improve on perfection anyway.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Do you want me to give it another go, or how do you feel about that? I didn't notice anything else. Yeah.
I've got a decent sized list. The only other thing, because I can't hear the game, how thoroughly were you paying attention to any missing sound effect?
Right. I think due to our conversation, maybe it was a little tough. The only ones that stood out to me were the 2 I mentioned, the uppercut and the missing.
Yeah. And not enough magic energy.
Right.
And then the hard land, or did we already say that? Yeah, hard land, and I feel like there was one other sound. I was going to ask, is there any sound at all when you're just walking, like a normal little footstep? That should be a very quiet sound, but it would be nice if it were there if nothing else was going on.
Right, I don't think there is at all. I think it's just completely silent. Okay. But you're right, that might add a little life, yeah.
And then the cool thing is we could make it change a little depending on the surface you're walking on per level, like a nice crunchy snow sound for the second level. It'd be really sweet.
Yeah, it'll make him feel, a little heavier and everything. Give him more presence.
Yeah, we could make a flapping wings sound too. That's nice little ambient sounds that really help bring them to life.
Yep. I'm wondering too if I don't know if there is a sound for it. Let me get to one of those guys. But the birds in the air that do the dive, I think they're just silent, aren't they, completely?
Yeah, there's no bird flapping, and then when they actually swoop down at you, yeah, there's no
I think maybe some kind of sound there would help with the giving you the warning that they're doing it and might
the cue,
trigger
audio cue. Absolutely. when you break the shield of the Birdman, I think right now it just does the same sound of the Birdman getting hurt.
Right.
So we should have a clanging metal, like breaking shield type sound.
Yeah. I think that would work. Another thing after playing it again, I'm realizing is the regular alternate Birdmen that have the golden boomerang.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like there's a big lack of them in the level. There's just not that many of them here. So maybe getting more of those.
I have not yet added the second sub boss at the end, which
Right.
will have two of them, and then two of the ones with the shields and the biggest boomerang
Right.
weapon. So they'll be at least there, but we might want to add a couple more besides that.
And another thing too, like I'm doing now, how do you feel about this? I cleared the enemies and I can walk all the way back to the beginning.
Yeah, like there's no point, there's no reason a player would want to do that, but the fact that they can do that is
Yeah.
maybe a little weird. I mean, we could...
I'm thinking maybe there's...
That's a good question. I mean, we could literally create a screen scroll stopper so that they can only go back so much because there's no
Right.
point in going backward.
I think that's worth
might
it.
make the game
So you can go back
feel
a
a
little,
little
but then it kind of like maybe a screen's
Exactly.
worth, and
Maybe-
then it just...
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm thinking like a one screen. Great point. For this, I created two new variables in the camera sprite object. The first one being scroll back limiter, which is a numeric value. And the second one is a text value, which is called limit scroll back. So this lets me tell the game in which levels I want the scrolling to be limited. And then, so if we do want the scrolling to be limited, and if the player is holding to the right, and if the camera's current X position is greater than the current numeric value of scrollback limiter, then we're increasing the value. We're making the scrollback limiter value match the camera's X position. So every time the player goes further in the level to the right, we set the scrollback limiter value to that new value. So that value can only get higher and higher. And then we tweaked these two original events for controlling the camera's X position. Before, it would have nothing to do with this value called scrollback limiter. But you can see now we're setting it to the max value, so it'll pick the highest value of two options. The first being the player box X, which is the actual player character's rectangle that controls his position and movement. So it's either going to be that or camera scrollback limiter minus 90. So what this does is make it so that at most you can only ever go back 90 pixels to the left of the furthest to the right you've ever gone. So basically there's a force field following you 90 pixels behind you, so that when if you go forward and then turn around, the camera's going to stop scrolling at that point. I hope that makes sense. It's a little convoluted to explain, but I hope that makes sense. Ooh, and yeah, at the end of the level. End of level arrow prompt telling you to walk off the edge of the screen. You know what I mean?
Right. Oh, yeah, that's true.
Like a nice golden arrow pointing your way, like, go this way, you did it, you know? For this, I simply made a normal construct sprite and put this little arrow graphic. I'm not really happy with that yet. I'll make an improved version at some other point. But anyway, it's just a single image framed construct sprite. And then I just gave it a horizontal sine wave behavior, period of 1 second, magnitude of 4 pixels. And then in its Z order, I put it just above the tile map so all characters and stuff would go in front of it.
And I guess it is... I did make that little end section look a little different, but I don't know, other than the arrow, I mean, some specific thing that makes it obvious, like this is the end and you're going to the next place, just in the level. I don't know if that's necessary, though.
Right.
It feels like a graphic that is going to take up space in memory that isn't it's only used for one specific thing, so I don't know. But
Yeah, it's certainly not critical, but it would be a really nice visual reward besides the generic arrow that's like, oh, I definitely got somewhere new and important, and it would be a nice way to transition you into like what I was thinking is two of those columns, like here.
Right.
One in the foreground layer and then one in the extreme foreground layer right at the edge, so it almost acts like the doorway, so to speak, to this very arena.
Yeah, we'll think about that. I mean, I think that's definitely more of a super polishy kind of
Cherry
thing.
on
So
top. Yeah, for sure.
this boss fight is epic, man.
Yeah.
Other than that, I'm trying to think. Wasn't there that one thing we found before we were recording, which is like, I think if you get hit in the air and you get a power up, it stops your left and right movement after that, something like that.
Oh, you mean the bug where you're stuck and can't scroll? Yeah. Luckily, when we were doing that test recording, we made the bug happen, and once I get to watch that video, I should see exactly what sequence caused it and finally fix that bug.
Okay, I think we have a pretty good list to work with for fixing things. Is there any final thoughts you have, Mike?
Not really. It was very cool to see you finally get to really play it in depth for a while, and it was definitely encouraging how quickly you got good enough to every time get to the boss. It was nice to see that you adapted really quickly, and with those couple of tweaks, and especially the warning that the thing's going to come, I think the difficulty of the level is feeling really close to what it should be.
Yeah.
And we'll know for sure once we get those other last few tweaks in, like making those powers that kill, like the meteor attack at its weakest level, making that not kill Birdmen in one hit and stuff like that. I think it'll be really nice.
Yeah, I was feeling pretty confident about it. I thought there might need to be a lot more changes there, but it's feeling pretty solid to me. So,
awesome.
All right. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time. If you enjoy our content and want to keep up to date on our games, please leave a like and subscribe. Also, if you want to support our projects, consider becoming a patron. The link's in the description, and we'll see you soon.